Hey, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of Jerseys with Josh. Thank you so much for joining. Today, I have the absolute honor of speaking to what I like to call the greatest collector, Shawn Chaulk. Shawn, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
My pleasure. Shawn, how did you get into collecting game-worn items in the first place?
Well, game worn was kind of evolutionary. I mean, I started off as an autograph collector back in, I guess, the very early 90s, maybe 1991. And that even was weird how that even came about and how I got into this hobby, because before that, I guess once a collector, always a collector. As a kid, I collected coins and things. But in the early 90s, I took up golf. And as part of that new venture, I subscribed to Golf Digest, and the first edition I got featured Arnold Palmer. And the story writer talked to the people in his circle, and one of the people they interviewed in that was his assistant. And one of the things she talked about in there was how once a week she would sort all of Mr. Palmer's mail out, and he would come in for a couple of hours and sign all of the fans' autograph requests. And I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. He'll answer mail and sign autographs. I thought, I got to get in on this. So I clipped out the magazine pictures and went and bought a golf glove. And I sent it to the editor of the magazine and said, hey, I loved your story. Can you send this on to Mr. Palmer? And a couple of months later, I go to the mailbox, and lo and behold, my autographed photos were there and the glove, and that started my journey on autograph collecting. And as you get into that whole demographic and community of collecting, you realize there's other things out there that are connected to celebrity. And one day, again, maybe fast forward 10 years, I had time on my hands and I was walking around Edmonton, and I went into a pawn shop and I was just chatting. I was killing time. And I stood up chatting to the guy, and I noticed a bunch of hockey sticks behind the counter. And I said, what's the story with the hockey sticks? And he goes, oh, they're NHL player sticks. And I said, what do you mean they're NHL player sticks? I said, players use them? And he goes, yeah. He says, we get them all the time. So he showed me a stick, and it was by a player named Wayne Gretzky, a cup of coffee player for the Chicago Blackhawks, I think at the time. And I'm holding the stick in awe. And I said, so this guy played in the NHL with this stick? And he goes, yeah. And I said, how much is it? And he's $25. And I said, I'll take it. So all of a sudden now I'm a game worn collector. And then that got into my passion for Wayne Gretzky, of course. And then again, that's a whole new chapter.
That's wonderful. Yes, and of course, you're known. You've always been known for your Wayne Gretzky collection. How did you end up choosing to focus on Wayne Gretzky instead of someone like Gordie Howe or Ted Lindsay or any other superstar?
Right. Well, I moved to Alberta with my family in 1980, and I landed here on my 13th birthday. And before that, I came from down east, and we're 3.5 hours further away in terms of time zone. So we only got hockey on CBC on Saturday nights at 9:30. And up until that point, well, 9:30 was my bedtime. So I didn't see a lot of hockey growing up. And I thought I was a Boston Bruins fan because, well, that's the first hockey uniform my parents bought me when I was 5 years old. But I moved out west, and we landed here, and I heard about the Edmonton Oilers. They had just come into the league. And I just said to my dad, it's a new chapter. I'm going to cheer for the Edmonton Oilers. They're in the league, and we're Westerners now. So I'm going to be an Oilers fan. And if you became an Oilers fan, how could you not be a fan of Gretzky's and what he was doing to the game? And it just, again, it evolutionized, it kind of grew its own story, so to speak, because what he was doing, everybody was attracted to at the time if you were an Oilers fan.
It must have been incredible to see it as a youngster. And you've always been really open about your collection and wanting to share it and be a part of the community. Can you talk a little bit more about why that's important to you?
Yeah, well, one of the things I strategically did when I decided, I guess, that I conscientiously that I was going to be a collector, and I really wanted to build this collection, I wanted to be very public about it, because I always felt that the more you put your name out there as a collector, the more people got to know who you were. And then the more people, wanted to potentially sell a piece or get information on something, they'd come to you and you'd become the go-to guy for that particular collectible. For me, was Gretzky. So it opened up a lot of doors, and I really knew it would open a lot of doors for me if I was public. So any opportunity I got to be in a show or to, well, in today's world, do an interview like this, or the local newspapers would run stories as my collection grew and things like that, I took every opportunity I could to share the experiences and the collection and the acquisitions with the public on the websites and the forums I was a member of back then. Again, because the more exposure you get, the more well-known you become in that circle. And again, it's the law of attraction, right? The things just come to you then. And it got to that point where I didn't have to look for much. It just, my phone would ring or my email would go off, and the opportunities would present themselves. And I didn't let too many of them go by.
That's really cool. And one of the things that has always drawn me into this hobby is the stories, is the connection to the player. Like for me, holding a Sabres jersey from the 06-07 President's Trophy season and having that just makes me feel so connected to that memory and to those sort of stories of the players and the teams. And I know that's been a big part of your journey, as well as connecting the items that are in your collection to some really personal stories. So let's talk through some of the collectibles in your collection. I'll post a slideshow kind of while we're chatting on the side, but let's talk through some of the items in your collection.
Sure. Well, one thing I've done over the years, as big as my collection got, I mean, a lot of it was in storage, and I kept a lot of it here in my home office, as you're showing on the screen right now. But one thing I decided to do when I populated this office the last time is make everything in here personal, or things that were quote unquote didn't have a price on them. They weren't for sale. They weren't going to be for sale. And one of the things in here that I'm really proud to own is the jersey that Wayne Gretzky wore in the very first Heritage Classic game. As a matter of fact, in the slide you have up now, it's in the bottom center showcase. So that's one of the jerseys that Wayne wore in the first very, very cold Heritage Classic game. I think it was -25 that we attended back in 2002 or 2003. And the jersey means a lot to me for several reasons. Well, first of all, I'm a Gretzky fan, and it was the Heritage Classic. But on the personal side, it was the first game like that my wife and I ever attended together. We'd only been together 3 years at the time, a couple of years, and we took this experience in together. But more importantly, and more personal than that, we announced to our family and friends that night when we went to the game that we were pregnant with our first child, who's now almost 18. So when the NHL sold off the memorabilia like they do from these special events, I had to make sure that I got that jersey, because it's now my son's jersey, and what he chooses to do with it, of course, is up to him down the road. But it was really important to me that I got that jersey as a keepsake from that game, and as a memento to that announcement to our family and friends, and to the experience I had with my wife at the game. So that jersey is very important to me.
That's very special. I love that connection. Um, let's talk about Glenn Anderson. He's somebody that you've known and are even friends with.
Right. That's kind of a funny story, because years ago, the NHL old timers, as they do, came to town to take on the local RCMP firefighters in the charity game. They make their annual circuit, and Glenn was with the NHL team, and Brian Trottier was incidentally a friendship came out of that night as well, that event. But in any event, at the beginning of the game, the NHL old timers came out on the ice, and they were wearing their NHL team jerseys, but Glenn Anderson was wearing an Oilers jersey, different than the rest of the guys. So he wore the Oilers jersey through the warm up and in the first period. And I went to that game, and took my oldest son with me, and it was our first hockey game together of any kind. So it was a moment, a father-son moment for me that was special too. So the first period ended, and Glenn and Brian stayed on the ice. And the announcer said, okay, we're going to auction off Glenn's Oilers jersey that he's wearing. So I got in a bidding war with a guy a good friend of mine, but I didn't know who I was bidding against because they were running the auction from the ice and I was at one end of the rink and he was at the other. But I said I was having that jersey no matter what. It was going to be a souvenir for my son. So I won that jersey, and Glenn said, come on down to the dressing room. So I went down to the dressing room, and that was my first introduction to Glenn. And we sat through the intermission, my son and I with Glenn, and I was taking pictures of Glenn with my son and things. And Glenn took the jersey off his back and he autographed it to my son and gave it to him. And I actually took a photo of that moment with my son and Glenn sitting on the bench, both smiling, and Glenn's got the jersey off and he's holding it, and you can see the autograph in the picture. And coincidentally, I sent that picture to a friend who was working in Asia at the time and said, hey, look at the experience I had last night with my son. And a month later, I got this beautiful painting of that moment that he had commissioned and painted for me as a gift. And that actually hangs in my office right now. And Glenn, at a future time when he came to my house, autographed it to Spencer as well. So that painting of that moment is captured. I don't think you have a picture of that one, but so that started my friendship with Glenn. I don't know why, but we hit it off. He invited us out to dinner after the game with the players, and we went, and that started a friendship. So fast forward to 2008, when the Oilers retired his jersey number and put his number up to the rafters. He invited Spencer and I to come down and spend a few days with him and his family for the ceremonies and all of the things that were happening leading up to that. So we went down and we went to some great dinners with a bunch of NHLers and his friends and guests that honored him throughout the week. We went to the game and sat by the bench as his guest, and we just did a whole bunch of fun things with Glenn and his family that week. And after that event, on a visit to my house, Glenn brought that uniform that he wore. So I guess I digress a little bit. Whenever the Oilers retire a player's number, part of their ceremony is that the player being honored skates out on the ice from the end of the rink through a cloud of smoke and skates up the ice in full Oilers style, in full Oilers gear, and takes his victory lap kind of thing while the fans appreciate the moment. So Glenn brought me that entire uniform he was wearing and sat at my desk in my office and autographed every piece with the date of his retirement and gave it to us and said, I want you guys to have this. So that equipment sits in its own display case as for the picture you're showing. And he signed a whole bunch of pictures from that night for us and a canvas print that we had done of it, as you can see. And those items are phenomenally important to me and special. And I guess those will be Spencer's as well someday. I sure hope he likes hockey.
Yeah, fingers crossed. What a cool story. Such an incredible experience. And Shawn, you're such a great storyteller. Thanks for sharing that story. Let's talk about some sticks. Sticks are an important part of your collection, but not just for the sake of being used in games. They've got a really special connection. So talk me through some of these sticks that are in your collection.
I will. The 4 sticks in the picture are all game or event used Wayne Gretzky sticks. They're all autographed and whatnot, and each of the 4 of them has particular importance to me. Now, I've owned around 400 of Wayne's career game used sticks in my life, right from the backyard rink stick, which still hangs on a wall over there, right up to one of the last sticks he ever used in the last game. I've had representation of every model of stick he's ever played with in my collection. But when it come time to set this office up in what I'm calling personal space, in that everything in here has a story or a memory, these 4 sticks were the keepers. So the red one that you can see is actually one of the 6 sticks he used in the original Heritage Classic. And we've already talked about that story and its importance. So I actually bought that in conjunction with the jersey, and it's part of the collection that will be Spencer's at some point. But Spencer actually gets 2 sticks. I have 3 kids. the white stick you see to the left, that one's a really cool story. So when Spencer was 5 years old, it was coming up on Father's Day. And he said to his mom, he said, "Mom, this year I want to go and pick out the gift for Dad. I want to do it myself." So she said, okay. And off they went to the mall and did their shopping. And come Father's Day morning, comes in the bedroom with my breakfast and gifts. And I'm doing my thing. And he's holding in his hand this gift that was obviously very special and had to be last. So with that, he jumps up on the bed and we open the gift together. And he knew me well as a 5-year-old because it was a beautifully framed autographed photo of Gretzky playing in the 1984 Canada Cup. And the photo was from the gold medal game against Sweden. Full, beautiful front-on photo of Wayne in action. And this stick is actually a Titan like he used, but it's a special stick. It has Canada Cup 84 written down the side of it, as you can see. A very highly desirable stick to stick collectors. So, Spencer and I are looking at the photo and I'm telling him how important it is and what a great gift it was. And that I said to him, I said, I said, down in Dad's office, I said, there's a wall with about 70 hockey sticks on it. I said, you know what I'm talking about? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, 2 of those sticks in that rack were actually used by Wayne in the 84 Canada Cup. I said, wouldn't it be cool if we took this picture downstairs and one of those 2 sticks was the one he has in his hands in this photo? And lo and behold, a half an hour later, we're holding a photo matched game used championship game from the 84 Canada Cup. So that stick and photo will always be put aside for Spencer because that was a really, really fun collecting moment we shared together. Despite him not having a passion really for the game or for collecting, that was a moment we shared, and you can't take that away from me. We've been offered $10,000 for that stick because it is a highly collected stick, and there's no chance. There's no price tag on that stick.
That's so wonderful. As a fellow father, like what a special moment to share with your son. So
yeah,
that's so cool.
Amazing memory for sure. The other 2, the pink one, as you can see in the picture that's up there now, to the right in the pink chair is my daughter wearing a Gretzky onesie. There's framed onesies up there for each of my kids that Wayne signed for them when they were born. But back when Wayne was coaching the Phoenix Coyotes, the NHL was having its annual Hockey Fights Cancer campaign where all the teams on a specific week wear Hockey Fights Cancer themed warm-up jerseys, and they get auctioned off in the name of cancer, and players tape their sticks pink. And in this case, Wayne used a pink stick, which you can see is autographed. He used it as coach. His coaches use sticks as well. So the NHL was holding their Hockey Fights Cancer auction, and I was bidding in the auction. I wanted this stick. And the power went in the last moments of the auction. It was winter and we had a power failure. So I said, great, I lost the stick. It took me a full year to find out who won the stick and track it down. I contacted the buyer and I told them why I wanted the stick so bad. And I wanted it for my daughter because it was pink. But more importantly, because at the time, both of my parents were struggling through cancer. So winning the stick, was kind of a double-edged sword. I wanted it in honor of them and their struggle. And I wanted it because it was a pink Gretzky stick. And what more fitting for my daughter than to have a pink Gretzky stick? So I ended up, the guy totally understood. He was very accommodating. He sold me the stick for not a penny more than he paid. And that stick is on the wall and will forever be Maria's stick.
So wonderful.
And the last stick is my youngest son's. His name is Phoenix. And in 2006, I believe it was, I traveled to Phoenix, Arizona, and played in Wayne Gretzky's fantasy hockey camp for a week. An experience I could write a book about, but I got to play on a team with Wayne, and I got to play on a line with Wayne for a while. And this stick Wayne used when I played on the line with him. So here I am, big collector, passionate about Gretzky's career and his place in the game and whatnot. And here I am, little old me, sitting on the bench next to Wayne Gretzky, like living the dream totally. It just I couldn't have imagined it being any better than it was at that moment in terms of my passions and my hockey career, or career and aspirations, I guess. But Phoenix, our youngest, is not quite 10, and he was a preemie. He was 10 weeks early. He came to us in an emergency situation. There was issues at his birth, and he was, for lack of a better word, revived as he came out of his nest as the mythical phoenix bird is in Greek mythology. So he got the name Phoenix for that reason. That's why he got his name. We say he earned his name. So this stick became his because I was in Phoenix living the dream, and my little boy Phoenix got to live to dream. So that stick kind of just fit for him.
That's so special, Shawn. You've not only got an amazing collection that, in many ways, honors the greatest player to ever play the game, but the connection that it has to you and your family is what makes it so special. And I'm so grateful for you for spending some time to talk through this with me. You are a huge member of this hobby. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how might they do that? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can email me at hockeyman99@me.com. That's hockeyman99@me.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and those handles are at IamHockeyman99. And they can call me. Anyone can call me or text me, 780-792-1864. I'm an open book. Speaking of books, I could probably stay on here for about 10 hours telling stories of great experiences I've had. But I do plan on putting them in a book. I've already got the base set, and I've been approached before I decided I was going to do this by 2 authors to write a book on the experiences and the collection journey. So it is something that's on my list to do. I hope to get it done in the next year, but I can't wait. I don't care if I only print 3 copies for each of my 3 kids, but I will write the story.
Well, I'll be a reader when it's printed, so make that 4. Looking forward to that. Shawn, once again, thank you for being here. Folks, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to be featured on the show, you can reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @jerseyswithjosh, and that'll do it for today. So Shawn, thank you so much. Everybody, enjoy the hobby.
Thank you, guys.